Welcome. Today, we're diving into the important topic of disability accommodation requests to state offices. Whether you're an individual with a disability, a family member, or someone working in a public agency, understanding how to request accommodations is crucial. State offices are required by law to provide reasonable accommodations to ensure equal access to their services and programs. But what exactly does this process look like? In this video, we'll break down the basics, walk through the steps, and highlight key points you need to know. Let's start by defining what a disability accommodation request actually is. A disability accommodation request is a formal or informal appeal made by a person with a disability to a state office, asking for changes or adjustments that enable them to access services, programs, or employment opportunities. These requests are protected by laws like the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. The goal is to remove barriers and ensure equal participation. Accommodations can range from physical changes, like ramps or accessible restrooms, to policy modifications, such as flexible work hours or alternative communication methods. Understanding this definition is the first step in navigating the process. Anyone with a qualifying disability can make an accommodation request to a state office. This includes individuals with physical, sensory, intellectual, or mental health disabilities. The process is not limited to employees. It also applies to members of the public seeking access to state services or programs. Family members or advocates can sometimes assist in making the request, especially if the individual needs support. Knowing who is eligible helps ensure that everyone who needs accommodations can confidently approach state offices for assistance. Disability accommodation requests are grounded in federal and state laws. The Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, is the primary law that mandates equal access and prohibits discrimination based on disability. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act also plays a key role, especially for programs receiving federal funding. Many states have their own additional laws that reinforce or expand these protections. Understanding the legal framework helps you know your rights and the obligations of state offices. Accommodations can take many forms, depending on the needs of the individual and the nature of the state office's services. Examples include physical changes like installing ramps, providing sign language interpreters, offering documents in alternative formats such as Braille or large print, or modifying policies to allow service animals. Sometimes, accommodations involve technology, like screen readers or accessible websites. The key is that the accommodation should address the specific barrier faced by the individual. It's important to request an accommodation as soon as you realize you need one to access a state service or program. Early requests help ensure that the state office has enough time to review and implement the necessary changes. However, you can make a request at any point if a barrier arises. There's no need to wait for a crisis. Being proactive can make the process smoother for everyone involved. To begin, identify the specific barrier you're facing and consider what accommodation would help. Then, contact the relevant state office. This could be in person, by phone, email, or through an online portal. Some offices have designated ADA coordinators or disability services staff who handle these requests. If you're unsure where to start, check the office's website or call their main number for guidance. Preparing your request in advance can help you communicate your needs clearly. Accommodation requests can be made in writing or verbally. While written requests provide a clear record and can help avoid misunderstandings, verbal requests are also valid and must be taken seriously by state offices. If you make a verbal request, consider following up with an email or letter to confirm the details. This helps ensure everyone is on the same page and can speed up the process if questions arise later. When making a request, include key information, your name and contact details, a description of your disability, if comfortable sharing, the specific barrier you're facing, and the accommodation you're requesting. You don't need to disclose your entire medical history, just enough to explain why the accommodation is needed. Being clear and specific helps the state office understand and respond to your needs more effectively. Here's an example. Hello, my name is Alex Smith. I have a mobility impairment and use a wheelchair. I am unable to access the second floor of your building because there is no elevator. I am requesting that meetings I need to attend be held on the first floor or that an accessible meeting space be provided. This sample shows how to clearly state your needs without unnecessary detail. Sometimes, a state office may ask for documentation to support your request. This could include a doctor's note or other medical records. However, they should only ask for information relevant to the accommodation, not your entire medical history. If you have documentation ready, it can help speed up the process, but you are not always required to provide it, especially for obvious disabilities. State offices are required to keep your disability information confidential. Details about your disability and accommodation request should only be shared with staff involved in the process. This protects your privacy and ensures sensitive information isn't disclosed unnecessarily. If you have concerns about confidentiality, ask the office how your information will be handled. After you submit your request, the state office should engage in an interactive process with you. This means they'll discuss your needs, possible accommodations, and any alternatives if your first choice isn't feasible. The goal is to find a solution that works for both you and the office. Open communication is key to a successful outcome. State offices are expected to respond to accommodation requests promptly. While there's no universal deadline, most agencies aim to reply within a reasonable time, often within a few days to a couple of weeks. If your request is urgent, let the office know so they can prioritize it. Keeping track of when you made your request can help if you need to follow up. After reviewing your request, the state office may grant the accommodation, suggest an alternative, or, in rare cases, deny the request if it would cause an undue hardship. If your request is denied, the office should explain why and discuss other possible solutions. Remember, the process is meant to be collaborative, not adversarial. An accommodation can be denied if it would cause significant difficulty or expense for the state office. This is called an undue hardship. Factors include the cost of the accommodation, the office's resources, and the impact on operations. However, offices must consider all options before denying a request. If you receive a denial, you have the right to ask for a detailed explanation. If your accommodation request is denied, you have the right to appeal. Most state offices have a formal appeals process, which may involve submitting a written appeal or requesting a review by a higher authority. Be sure to ask about deadlines and required documentation. Persistence can pay off many. Denials are overturned on appeal when more information is provided. Many state offices have ADA coordinators or disability services staff who specialize in handling accommodation requests. These professionals can guide you through the process, answer questions, and help resolve issues. If you're unsure where to direct your request, ask to speak with the ADA coordinator. They're there to help. If you're an employee of a state office, you have the right to request accommodations in the workplace. This could include modified work schedules, assistive technology, or changes to job duties. The process is similar to requesting accommodations as a member of the public, but may involve human resources staff as well. Members of the public can request accommodations to access state services, such as applying for benefits, attending public meetings, or participating in programs. The process is designed to ensure everyone can participate fully, regardless of disability. Don't hesitate to ask for what you need to access these services. State offices that oversee education, such as public schools or universities, must provide accommodations to students with disabilities. This might include extra time on tests, accessible classrooms, or note-taking assistance. The process often involves working with disability services offices and may require documentation from a healthcare provider. If you want to attend a public event hosted by a state office, you can request accommodations such as sign language interpreters, accessible seating, or assistive listening devices. It's best to make your request as early as possible to give organizers time to prepare. State offices are committed to making events accessible to all. With more state services moving online, virtual accommodations are increasingly important. These might include captioning for video calls, accessible websites, or alternative formats for digital documents. If you encounter barriers in virtual environments, don't hesitate to request the support you need. Some accommodations are temporary, such as after surgery or during recovery, while others may be permanent. State offices should consider the duration of your need when reviewing your request. If your situation changes, you can always update or modify your accommodation request. It's illegal for state offices to retaliate against anyone for requesting an accommodation. You have the right to ask for what you need without fear of negative consequences. If you believe you've been retaliated against, you can file a complaint with the office or with external agencies like the U.S. Department of Justice. Accommodations aren't just about physical access, they also include communication. If you need information in a different language, sign language, interpretation, or materials in large print or braille, you can request these from state offices. Ensuring effective communication is a key part of accessibility. If you use a service animal, state offices must allow your animal to accompany you in most public areas. You may be asked if the animal is required because of a disability and what tasks it performs, but you shouldn't be asked for documentation. Service animals are a recognized accommodation under the ADA. State offices are required to maintain accessible facilities. This includes ramps, elevators, accessible restrooms, and clear signage. If you encounter a physical barrier, you can request that it be addressed as an accommodation. Accessibility is an ongoing responsibility for public agencies. Technology used by state offices, such as websites and kiosks, must be accessible to people with disabilities. This includes compatibility with screen readers, keyboard navigation, and alternative text for images. If you find technology that isn't accessible, you can request modifications or alternative access. If you need to use transportation services provided by a state office, you can request accommodations, such as accessible vehicles, priority seating, or assistance boarding. Transportation accessibility is a key part of ensuring everyone can access public services and programs. If you're attending a meeting at a state office, you can request accommodations such as accessible meeting rooms, assistive listening devices, or materials in alternative formats. Make your request as early as possible to ensure the office has time to prepare. If you're interviewing for a job with a state office, you can request accommodations such as extra time, accessible interview locations, or alternative formats for tests. Let the office know your needs in advance so they can make the necessary arrangements. State offices that administer tests or exams must provide accommodations such as extended time, separate testing rooms, or alternative formats. If you need an accommodation for a test, submit your request as early as possible and provide any required documentation. State offices that oversee elections must ensure polling places are accessible. Accommodations may include accessible voting machines, curbside voting, or assistance from poll workers. If you need help voting, you have the right to request support to ensure your voice is heard. If you're applying for state benefits, you can request accommodations such as help filling out forms, accessible application materials, or in-person assistance. State offices must ensure the application process is accessible to everyone, regardless of disability. State offices involved in public safety, such as police or emergency services, must provide accommodations during interactions. This could include communication aids, accessible facilities, or alternative procedures. Your safety and access to services are protected by law. If you're called for jury duty, you can request accommodations such as accessible courtrooms, assistive listening devices, or breaks for medical needs. Courts are required to make reasonable accommodations so everyone can serve if eligible. If you're applying for a state license, such as a driver's license or professional certification, you can request accommodations for the application process or testing. This ensures everyone has a fair opportunity to meet licensing requirements. If you need access to public records, you can request accommodations such as alternative formats or assistance reviewing documents. State offices must make records accessible to everyone, regardless of disability. If you want to participate in a public hearing, you can request accommodations such as accessible locations, interpreters, or materials in alternative formats. State offices must ensure hearings are open and accessible to all members of the public. State offices that manage parks or recreation programs must provide accommodations such as accessible trails, adaptive equipment, or program modifications. Everyone should have the opportunity to enjoy public recreation, regardless of disability. If you're applying for state-supported housing, you can request accommodations such as accessible units, modifications to living spaces, or assistance with applications. State offices must ensure housing programs are accessible to people with disabilities. State offices that provide child and family services must offer accommodations to ensure parents and children with disabilities can access support. This might include accessible meeting spaces, communication aids, or flexible scheduling. If you believe your accommodation request was handled improperly, you can file a complaint with the state office or with external agencies. Most offices have a grievance process, and you can also contact the U.S. Department of Justice or your state's Human Rights Commission for help. In summary, requesting a disability accommodation from a state office is your right and is protected by law. The process is designed to be accessible, collaborative, and confidential. If you need more information or assistance, reach out to the state office's ADA coordinator or visit official government websites for resources and guidance. Remember, equal access benefits everyone.